Hi Design class. I want to give you a little bit of introduction to how to use watercolors. So here are all the things that I need in order to use watercolors. Of course, I have the watercolor palette, so this is just the bigger version of what you have. It comes with the a mixing palette. You're gonna need a big cup of water, or I also sometimes use like an ice cube tray, and I have a lot of tiny little pockets of water so that whenever I'm rinsing my brush with one color, I don't like bring that into the next color. So I can use like a blank water pocket, if you want to call it. I have a little spray bottle with some water in it. This is totally optional. And what this is used for is just to activate all of your dry palette. So what I usually do is when I get this out, I'll spray this with water like 5 minutes before I'm ready to work on it. So it gets all nice and moist, ready to go. This is optional, it's just a little helpful. You can also just like splash or sprinkle a little bit of water with your hands or something like that. I have a few different kinds of brushes here. So what I have here is a round brush. So this is the traditional, this one right here is the traditional like watercolor brush. As you can tell, its base is round and it has like a little point on top. It holds tons of water, okay? Then I have a flat brush, and I'll show you guys how to use all of this kind of stuff. I have like a small round brush, and then I have a detail brush, which I just like to use it, but you can really kind of mix and match all of these. And if you don't have like every single one of these, it's really not a big deal. I have a 6H pencil here, so you can use any kind of like light pencil, my eraser, and then some micron pens, just to show how to mix outlines and watercolors together. I have my watercolor paper here. It could be in a pad like this, or it could just be like loose paper, that's fine. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is show you how to use one color. We're not gonna go into mixing two different, like doing like an ombre effect or anything like that, but I'm gonna show you how to mix colors in order to make a new color, and then show you how the whole, how to make it from light to dark. Okay, so a little bit about watercolors is that they are transparent. So that means if you add more water to it, they're gonna be a lot lighter, and then the less water you add to it, they're gonna be darker. So I'm gonna just use like one of these colors, and I'm gonna put it right here. So this one has like a very minimal amount of water, just to kind of like get it working, get it all loosened up. And this is what it looks like. So here I am using a round brush and just creating like a little square. You want to hold it like a pencil and be really gentle. Okay, and the way this particular brush does is that if you press a little bit harder, the line is of course a lot thicker. And then if you want to use it as a detail, you just don't press too hard and use the tip, and you can get a finer line. Okay, so let's add a little bit of water to it. I've added maybe about like 1 drop. Okay, so it's just a teeny bit lighter than that. Let's add more water to this. So as you can see, it's getting lighter and lighter. So when you're doing, you're kind of playing around like with creating value, making it from darker to lighter is the best way to go. And you can get it pretty light where it's just like a really light wash of color, okay, which I think also can make a pretty big impact. Okay, so let's say we want to mix two different colors. So if I want to make an orange, for example, I can use one of my yellow colors, and it's really, you just have to kind of play around with it a lot. Okay, wash my brush so I can pick up another color, which is going to be this red. Okay, so this is really dark, as you can see. I'm gonna need a whole lot of yellow to balance this out. So sometimes, mostly all the time actually, a darker the color is, the more impact it has when it comes to mixing. So I'll just kind of mix it on the side and kind of pick up the red a little bit at a time. So we got like a nice mustard color. I'm gonna just kind of keep drawing a little bit of that red color until I have what I want. So this is a nice little color that I have here. Nice orange. If I want to make it lighter again, just add water to it. And it's always good whenever you're doing your final piece, just have a scrap piece of watercolor paper on the side so you can test exactly how light your washes are. Okay. Just a cool trick, if you want to add a little splash of color within what you've drawn, while it's wet, you can grab other color and just kind of drop it in. And it'll just kind of mix in and have a little bit more of like an organic effect. Okay, and you don't have to do this since this is just an introduction. You can just stick with really flat color. Okay. And what you want to do is just wait for things to dry. If you want to add another layer to it, it's a little bit more difficult. So let me go back to some of these that have dried already. So let's say I want to add like a rectangle here. I'll just do that really carefully. I don't want to activate some of the previously dried color, so I'm not gonna like keep going over it and try to like go like this to mix it. So you just want to go really fast with a really light hand, and you can overlap some colors as well that way. Just remember the previous color has to be dry. If it's wet, then it'll mix like this. Okay, so that's using a round brush. A flat brush will cover more wide pieces of areas. So really you can use any brush. If you were just to use one brush, I would choose something like this. That's medium size. So this is like a size 8 round. And this should cover like all of the basics, especially if you're not doing like pages of watercolor. It's just little pieces here and there, like for this this particular project. You will have another project where you're using this like pretty extensively. So for that one, you may need a couple of other types of brushes, but you can really get away with one. I'm just gonna mix these and make a new color. And this will give you like a flat kind of line of color. Okay. And then, of course, if you're using a really small brush, you can use them to create small lines and little details. All right, so this is just using watercolor on its own. Now, what if you want to mix pen and do an outline? Okay, so I'm going to do an example of a more complicated illustration, and you really just have to follow 3 steps, and I'll just kind of write them here. So the first thing you want to do is use pencil very lightly. Then you're going to use watercolor. And then the last step, you're going to use ink. And this is because if you draw first and watercolor second, the watercolor can actually start to blur the ink. You do not want that. So this is the correct layering technique that you want. Okay, so let's say I'm trying to do like a little house icon, for example. So I'm gonna draw so lightly that only I can see it. Hopefully you guys can kind of see it in the video, but it's so light that I know where the outlines are, but really when I start watercoloring and using ink on top of it, no one will be able to tell that there was any pencil in it. So the pencil is really just there for some guidelines. Okay, so I have my outlines. The second thing I'm gonna do is just start coloring it. So I have a little green here that I'm just gonna activate from, it dried from a while ago. So I actually like to keep some of my colors on my palette if I wanna reuse them. Okay. And meanwhile, I'm gonna leave this to dry so that I can do other colors. So I really like to just wait between color applications. So since I'm gonna put like a different color here on the roof, and since it's like touching the green part, I'm gonna wait for the green part to dry, which sometimes it's just like 30 seconds and it's dry. And then I can kind of start doing that. Take your time. I'm just gonna, sometimes I like to just randomly mix color. I'm like, oh, maybe this should be a little bit more blue. So I'll just grab a little blue and create like little undertones of colors. Little tip when you're working with watercolor, so if you don't like little drops, you see how it sometimes gets dark in certain areas because there's like more water there. You can actually grab a paper towel or a napkin or something and just gently kind of dab it so it kind of sucks the liquid out. Just make sure you create like a point with it so you're not messing up the rest of it. So in order for that to happen, of course your drawing has to be still wet, so you have to work kind of fast. once it's dry, you can actually use the same color and layer on top of it like this, and it'll create 2 layers. So you'll have like a little bit of darkness and lightness, kind of like that. So I'm gonna go back and do that with the green as well. Just kind of creating like little darkness. Gives it a little bit more texture. Again, if this is too difficult, that's fine. Just stick with 1 layer for this project. But this is just, you know, if you want to add a little texture, etc., etc. Okay, now I think I'm pretty happy with the watercolors that I've used. I'm gonna leave it to dry for about a minute or 2. Okay, so it's dry, and I'm gonna grab my micron pens and I'm gonna start outlining this. So if you're not great with straight lines, use a ruler. If you're fine, then just go straight at it. So I can tell already I didn't actually wait long enough, so it's kind of blurring right here. So I should have waited another couple of minutes so that my piece is completely dry. So that's kind of my fault. I didn't have enough patience, but I know that you do. Okay, so I have that. And if you want to create more details, make sure it's totally dry, and then you can start to create little details. So if you want to show like, oh, you know, this is like some siding here, you can use a tinier pen and do that. Little frame. This is also kind of like that video going from doodles to illustration by adding details and texture. Kind of grounds it a little bit. And I think I'll go back with a darker pen and make the outline stand out more, because right now it's kind of mixing in with the details. This one is using a 01, and the thicker outline is done with 03. Okay, so there you go. This is how you use watercolors. So you can go back and look at this value scale, overlapping, mixing, What happens a lot of times is that there will be sort of like a little bulge. Oops, I touched it while it was still wet. So I'll probably have to be careful with this one. Fix it. But it will warp your paper a little bit, and that's fine. You just have to be thoughtful and careful that you're not doing that so much that the entire piece of paper starts to warp. Another little trick that I wanted to show you how to use is to use masking tape. So the drafting tape that I asked you guys to use, you can use that if you want to paint a perfect box, for example. So of course this is not parallel in any case, but just wanted to quickly show you how to do that. Just make sure that the edges are stuck to the paper. And then grab whatever paint color you want and very gently create that wash. Okay, now you need to wait before you remove the tape, so you have to wait till it's completely dry. But so that you guys can start on your own, I'm gonna just remove it now and show you what it'll look like. Now, one thing is whenever you're removing the tape, if it's getting too stuck to your piece of paper, for example, like sometimes the glue, depends on the brand, sometimes the glue is a little too strong, you can actually use a hair dryer and just kind of warm it up a little bit, and the glue will loosen and you can peel it off without taking off any of your paper. Just be gentle with it. Okay. Again, if I were you, I know this is coming out okay, but it's best to just wait till the entire thing is dry and you'll have a perfect